And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel. We're taking a look today at an expansion for Marvel United, Return of the Sinister Six. Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery. He's one of the best in comic bookdom, maybe beaten only by Batman. But despite all these different villains he fights, they usually fall to him, but they work together in a group, the Sinister Six, which has had various members over the years, but they picked 6 here that are often in the group. Doc Ock, who usually tries to lead the group, Sandman, Electro, Vulture, and Kraven. And so what this set does, there's no heroes in it. It adds 6 different villains that you can play against. That's a lot of material considering the base game came with 3 villains. Here's 6 more. But it also has another way to play where you can play against all 6 at the same time. Let me show you. So first of all, this expansion adds 6 villains, and some of them are really cool villains. So we got Kraven, who's just hunting down the heroes, trying to kill them all. Doc Ock is destroying locations. So if he puts 3 crises on a location, that location's removed from the game, which causes a problem. Mysterio's threats are all face down. So when you go to a location, you don't necessarily know what Mysterio's doing at that location. So you're going to have to flip it face up and see what his threat cards are. You'll spend stuff and, oh, now he can be damaged. Before that, you can't even damage him. When this threat's revealed, you take 1 damage. So he's doing that. Electro is shooting electricity. He hits the person across from him and both the locations adjacent to that, which is kind of nasty. The Vulture's stealing stuff from different locations. There's some spoil tokens that you'll put out, the crisis tokens, and when he steals enough of them, he wins, but you can stop him by taking damage. And Sandman is trying to get to 20 health. He just keeps adding health all the time. When he bams, he adds 2 health. If you overflow, he adds 2 health. So you need to get to the point where you can start beating him up and then take that health away from him. So you can fight each of these villains separately. Now, when you're playing the Sinister Six, the whole game is set up differently. You're going to put this in the middle. You're going to randomly put the locations around it. There's going to be weak spots here placed by each of the different villains, and you're going to play against all 6 of these villains. And 2 of them are going to be placed across from the heroes, and then 2 in each spot. There's no missions here. To win this game, you have to defeat all 6 of these. Each one of them has a certain number of hit points, which is 2, 3, or 4 usually, based on the number of players. But you cannot defeat them until you've found their weak spot. So when players are taking actions, they can place tokens on each of these cards here, and when you've completely filled the card, that comes off the board, and now you can attack, in this case, for example, Dr. Octopus. So you're going to be defeating Dr. Octopus. You need to get rid of all these to be able to defeat them. Once you do that, you can then attack that villain. You also notice that there's nothing covering up these spots on the location, so you can use those unless there's a villain there. The villains will be standing on those spots and covering up, but if there's no villain there, you can do that. The heroes start the game under pressure, and we're using a special deck for this game. So after every 2 hero turns, you'll be turning over one of these cards, and you're going to move the top 2 people. So here I would move Sandman and Kraven. Now let's say the heroes that defeated Sandman, then I would move Kraven and Electro. If Sandman and Electro were to both defeat it, I would move Kraven and Mysterio. The first person would move 1 and add a thug. The second person moves 1 clockwise and adds a civilian. And they're usually going to be moving a certain distance, but they'll always add, one adds a thug, one adds a civilian, and they'll be doing their BAM abilities, which are located on the board. Each one has something different. For example, Mysterio gives a crisis token to each hero in his locations. And heroes with crisis tokens must play their card randomly on their turn and then discard 1. Doc Octopus, you put a crisis token in his location. Then you do damage to every hero in a location with crisis tokens. And they each have a very specific thing they're doing, so you have to figure out which ones you can find their weak spots and which ones you need to take out first, because you're going to keep drawing these cards. There's 16 of them, but when the last one's drawn, the heroes lose. But if you manage to defeat all 6 of the villains, you win. This is my favorite expansion for Marvel United. First of all, there's 6 villains here, and while I don't necessarily love all 6, 4 of them are amongst my favorite of the villains of the whole set. I think they're fantastic, and they do different unique things. Sandman growing gigantic, Doc Ock trying to blow up locations. It's fun and it's neat and interesting. But the Sinister Six, that itself is fantastic. It's so much fun because it just feels like a different game. You have 6 villains out there. You need to find their weak spots. Once you find their weak spot, then you can take them out. Man, I really like that. I wish, my biggest wish was that there was a board or ways that you could integrate other characters, like stick the Green Goblin as the Sinister Six, or, stick, Carnage in the Sinister. He wouldn't do it, but you know what I mean? Just being able to stick other ones in. But even though it's neat, they move more often, every 2 characters, but you are sitting there and the choices feel really interesting. Like Vulture, by the way, I think Vulture in the Sinister Six grouping, biggest pain in the neck. Because he picks up people from a location, and then when you hit him, he'll drop those people before he takes any damage. And you're like, oh, man. But, Mysterio's a pain in the neck, too. And you have to kind of figure out which ones do I want to take out first. And taking a couple of them out doesn't necessarily make the game easier. It just means the ones that you are fighting activate more often. It's very enjoyable. I find it unique. It's one of my favorite ways to play. It is my favorite way to play Marvel United. So that's Return of the Sinister Six. Highly recommended, especially if you're looking for variety amongst your villains. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent.